A cove in the Smoky Mountain vernacular is a relatively flat valley between mountains or ridges. This particular cove is a showcase for some of the most inspiring natural and cultural treasures that southern Appalachian mountains have to offer. In fact, there are a few other places within the entire national park system where both nature and human history can be enjoyed in such an idyllic setting. The primary access to Cades Cove is 11-mile one-way Cades Cove Loop Road. We will be driving our RV around the loop, stopping to visit some of the sites along the way. I recommend everyone stop at the entrance gate and obtain the Cades Cove Tour Book, published by the Great Smoky Mountains Association. The book is only $1 and provides a wealth of information. Much of the historical information provided in this video was from the tour book. John Oliver arrived in the cove prior to 1820 and bought this land in 1826. This house was built with simple tools, mules, and the help of neighbors. The notched corners and gravity held the house together. Open spaces between the logs were filled with mud to keep the wind, rain, and snow out.
I don't know if we can get this to show up. Yeah, there's upstairs to it too. Ask Amanda. I stood up for her when we saw bears. I didn't shy away from the bear. I was scared, but I would have to protect my family.
The Primitive Baptist Church was established in 1827. The original structure was a log building which was replaced by this one in 1887. Some of the earliest settlers lie in the cemetery behind the church. The church was closed during the Civil War. Official papers for the church declared it was on account of the rebellion and that the rebels were too strong here. Russell Gregory, a member of the Primitive Baptist Church, did not believe in slavery and was a very strong supporter of the American government. The Confederates regularly raided the Union sympathizers in the cove for food and supplies. A frustrated Gregory planned and executed a successful ambush of a Confederate party, hoping to put an end to these raids. Subsequently, the rebels came back and murdered Gregory. His tombstone can be seen here behind the church. The Methodist Church was built in 115 days for $115 by the local blacksmith, J.D. McCampbell. Completed in 1902, it replaced an earlier log structure built in the 1820s. The Civil War and Reconstruction divided the church. Dissidents formed the Hopewell Methodist Church on the opposite side of the cove. It no longer stands. The Missionary Baptist Church was formed by a group expelled from the Primitive Baptist Church, the first church we saw today. This building, which dates from 1915, was closed in 1944.
Cades Cove, and we're hiking to Elijah Oliver House. It's a half-mile trek to an old homestead.
This barn was relatively new when the Park Service bought the property in the 1930s. Unlike the other log constructed buildings we'll see later, this one was built of sawn lumber. Elijah Oliver, son of John Oliver, whose cabin we saw earlier, was born in the cove in 1824. Elijah moved his family out of the cove, returning years later after the Civil War. Times were different when Elijah was a boy. More buildings were required to live in the cove. With no refrigerator or freezer, they needed a spring house to keep milk and butter cool. They built a smokehouse to store and preserve meat for the entire year, and they needed a corn crib to store enough corn until next year's harvest. They used horses or mules to pull plows, harrows, wagons, and sleds, and they built a barn to shelter these animals and the cows that provided the milk. Our next stop was a hike to Abrams Falls. I made a separate video of this, and I'll leave a link here and at the end of this video if you'd like to watch that one. Next, we visited the cable mill area. Only the grist mill is on its original site. The other buildings were brought here from elsewhere in the park. On our right is the cane mill and sorghum furnace. This is the Gregg Cable House, which may have been one of the first all-frame houses built in the cove. It served as a boarding house and a general store. It was moved here from nearby Forge Creek Road in the 1940s. This type of drive-through barn made it more efficient for two men to unload hay from their wagon. This building was used to smoke and preserve pork for the year. Hog killing time was usually in November or December. John P. Cable built this water-powered grist mill and sawmill circa 1870. Grist mills like this one used water power and a millstone to grind corn into flour. The grist mill was in operation well into the 20th century. Today, Great Smoky Mountain Association operates the grist mill as an historical exhibit. Large cantilever barns like this one were common in the cove. The overhang provided shelter for livestock as well as storage space for farm equipment. Thanks for joining us today, and be sure to check out our other videos in the Great Smoky Mountains and other national parks.